Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey through the shadows of history. Tonight, we invite you to settle back, perhaps pull a soft blanket closer, and allow your mind to drift into the ancient streets of Babylon, where the evening air carried the scent of barley beer and distant music. The stars that once guided Babylonian astronomers through their celestial calculations now shine down upon you, connecting you across millennia to those who found joy and solace in the darkness. Tonight, we'll walk together through taverns thick with smoke and conversation, witness sacred processions under desert stars, and discover what it truly meant to seek pleasure and community when the sun disappeared behind the ziggurats. If you want to help me to keep doing these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the like button. It motivates and helps me keep bringing videos in this format. If you'd like to hear about a specific topic, leave a comment below, and I'll show you in a video when your topic is chosen. Imagine yourself walking through the dusty streets of Babylon as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. It's casting long shadows between the mud brick buildings that line the narrow pathways. The air still holds the day's heat, but there's a promise of coolness in the gentle breeze that carries with it the mingled scent of cooking fires, incense from nearby temples, and the ever-present aroma of the Euphrates River that gives life to this magnificent city. You make your way toward the outer districts, near the great walls that Nebuchadnezzar built to protect his people, where the common folk gather each evening to wash away the dust and toil of another day. The tavern you approach is nothing like the grand establishments you might imagine. It's a simple structure, its walls made of the same sun-dried bricks that form the foundation of every building in this ancient metropolis. Reed mats hang in the doorway, swaying gently in the evening air, and the warm glow of oil lamps flickers from within, casting dancing shadows on the packed earth floor. This is where the laborers come, the men who spent their day moving massive stones for the king's building projects, the women who wove textiles in the workshops, the merchants who haggled in the markets since dawn. Here, in this humble space, they transform the end of their working day into something approaching joy. As you step through the doorway, your senses are immediately enveloped by the tavern's distinctive atmosphere. The air is thick with the sweet, yeasty scent of barley beer, that golden liquid that flows more freely here than water itself. Clay vessels of various sizes line wooden shelves, each containing different strengths and flavors of this beloved beverage. The brewing process is an art form in Babylon, with recipes passed down through generations. And each tavern keeper takes pride in their unique blend of grains and herbs. Some add dates for sweetness, others prefer the slight bitterness of certain desert plants, creating a complexity of taste that speaks to the sophisticated palates of these ancient people. The sound that greets you is a gentle murmur of conversation, punctuated by occasional laughter and the soft clink of clay cups being raised in friendship. Unlike the boisterous revelry you might expect, the atmosphere here is one of quiet camaraderie. These people work hard for their daily bread, and their evening relaxation reflects a deeper need for peaceful communion rather than wild celebration. Groups of 3 or 4 gather around low tables, sharing not just their beer, but stories of their day, concerns about their families, gossip from the markets, and dreams of better times ahead. You notice how the tavern keeper, likely a woman according to Babylonian custom, moves with practiced grace between her customers. Women often ran these establishments, inheriting the knowledge and recipes from their mothers and grandmothers. She knows each patron by name, remembers their preferences, asks after sick children or aging parents. This is not merely a business transaction, but a continuation of the complex social fabric that holds Babylonian society together. When she pours the beer, she does so with ceremony, allowing the foam to settle just so, ensuring that each cup receives the proper amount of this precious liquid that serves as both nutrition and comfort. The conversations you overhear fill the concerns and joys of ordinary Babylonian life. A group of canal workers discusses the water levels of the Euphrates, worried about the upcoming harvest season and whether the irrigation channels will provide adequate flow to the outlying fields. Their weathered hands gesture expressively as they debate the merits of different techniques for maintaining the waterways that are so crucial to their civilization's survival. Another table hosts a quieter discussion between two women who work in the textile workshops, their voices barely audible as they share the intimate details of family life, the challenges of raising children in a city where disease and accident are constant threats. As the evening deepens and more oil lamps are lit, you begin to hear the gentle strumming of a lyre from one corner of the tavern. Music is never far from Babylonian nightlife, so it's not the elaborate performances of the royal court, but rather the simple melodies that speak to universal human experiences. The musician, perhaps a craftsman who learned to play as a boy, offers songs that everyone knows, melodies that have been hummed in these streets for generations. Some patrons join in with quiet vocals, their voices blending in harmonies that seem to rise naturally from their shared culture and common experiences. The beer continues to flow, served in clay cups that have been shaped by local potters, each one slightly different from the others, bearing the subtle marks of human hands. You observe how the act of drinking becomes almost ritualistic, with customers raising their cups in silent toasts to absent friends, to successful completion of difficult projects, to the hope that tomorrow will bring continued health and prosperity. The beer itself is more than just an intoxicating beverage. It's liquid sustenance in a world where clean water is often scarce, providing both calories and a sense of well-being that helps these hard-working people cope with lives that are frequently harsh and certain. As you settle into the rhythm of the tavern, you become aware of the subtle social hierarchies that govern even this relaxed environment. Skilled craftsmen command a certain respect, their knowledge of metalworking or stone carving giving them status even in this democratic space. Farmers from the outlying areas are welcomed but remain slightly separate, their conversations focused on weather patterns and crop yields rather than the urban concerns that dominate most discussions. Young men, not yet married, cluster together with the nervous energy of those still establishing their place in the world, while older patrons hold court with the authority that comes from having survived the challenges that Babylonian life presents. The tavern keeper occasionally emerges from behind her serving area to join conversations, particularly when disputes arise or when someone needs counsel about personal matters. She serves as an informal mediator, her establishment functioning as a kind of community center where social bonds are strengthened and conflicts are resolved before they can escalate into serious problems. This is the genius of Babylonian society, the understanding that human beings need spaces where they can gather, share their burdens, and find comfort in the company of others who understand their struggles. Outside, you can hear the distant sounds of the great city settling into evening routine. Guards call to each other from the massive walls, their voices carrying across the darkness as they maintain their eternal vigilance against threats from beyond the civilized world. Dogs bark in the narrow alleyways, and occasionally a donkey brays as late arriving caravans make their way through the gates before they close for the night. These sounds form a backdrop to the tavern's intimate atmosphere, reminding everyone present that they are part of something larger, citizens of the greatest city in the known world, protected by mighty walls and governed by laws that bring order to human affairs. As the hours pass and the oil lamps burn lower, casting ever-shifting patterns of light and shadow across the packed earth floor, you find yourself drawn deeper into the rhythms of Babylonian nightlife. The tavern has become a cocoon of warmth and human connection, insulated from the vastness of the desert that stretches beyond the city walls. The initial tentative conversations of early evening have given way to more intimate exchanges, as the barley beer loosens tongues and opens hearts to the kind of sharing that daylight hours rarely permit. You observe how the social Dynamics of the tavern shift as the night progresses. Earlier arrivals, those who came straight from their work, have settled into comfortable familiarity with their surroundings. Their initial thirst quenched, they now sip more slowly, savoring both the beer and the precious opportunity to exist without the constant pressure of labor and responsibility. New arrivals continue to filter in through the reed mat doorway, each bringing with them fresh energy and different perspectives on the day's events, creating a constant, gentle circulation of news, gossip, and opinion that keeps the atmosphere vibrant without becoming overwhelming. The conversations you'd hear revealed the sophisticated understanding these ancient people possessed about their world. Despite lacking what we would consider advanced education, a group of irrigation workers engages in detailed discussion about the mathematical principles behind their canal systems, demonstrating knowledge of hydraulic engineering that would not seem primitive even by modern standards. They speak of water pressure and flow rates with the casual expertise of professionals who understand that their civilization's survival depends entirely on their ability to manage the life-giving waters of Euphrates and Tigris rivers. At another table, merchants who have recently returned from trading expeditions share tales that illuminate the vast network of commerce that connects Babylon to the furthest reaches of the known world. They speak of Syrian cedarwood, of precious stones from the mountains of Iran, of exotic spices that arrive from lands so distant that few Babylonians could even imagine them. Their stories reveal not just the material wealth that flows through their great city, but also the cultural exchange that occurs when peoples from different civilizations meet in the marketplaces and caravanserai of Mesopotamia. As you listen more carefully, you begin to appreciate the subtle poetry that permeates everyday Babylonian speech. These are the descendants of the people who created the world's first written literature, and their oral tradition reflects a sophistication with language that transforms even mundane topics into something approaching art. When they describe their work, their families, their hopes and fears, they do so with metaphors drawn from their intimate relationship with the natural world around them. A potter compares his relationship with clay to a farmer's relationship with soil, both requiring patience, skill, and an understanding of forces beyond human control. The tavern keeper continues her graceful movement between tables, but now her role has evolved from simple service provider to something approaching that of a counselor or confessor. You watch as a young man, clearly troubled by some personal crisis, seeks her advice in hushed tones near the beer storage area. She listens with the practiced attention of someone who has heard countless tales of human struggle, offering gentle words and practical wisdom gained from years of observing the full spectrum of human behavior in her establishment. The music, too, has evolved as the evening progresses. The single lyre player has been joined by someone with a small drum, creating a rhythm that seems to pulse in harmony with the tavern's collective heartbeat. Their repertoire has shifted from the cheerful working songs of early evening to more contemplative melodies, songs that speak of love, lost and found, of the eternal human struggle against the indifferent forces of nature, of the small victories that make life worth living despite its inevitable hardships. You notice how physical gestures and expressions have become more animated as inhibitions fade with each cup of beer consumed. Hands move more expressively as stories are told. Faces become more open and vulnerable. And the formal politeness that governs daytime social interactions gives way to genuine emotional connection. Yet, even in this relaxed state, the fundamental courtesy and respect that characterizes Babylonian society remains intact. Voices are raised in laughter, but never in anger. Disagreements are discussed with animated but civilized debate, and the strong help the weak with the unconscious generosity that marks a truly civilized people. As the night deepens further, you become aware of the tavern's role as an informal information exchange. News travels through these establishments like water through irrigation channels, reaching every corner of the city's population. A scribe shares rumors from the palace about upcoming construction projects that might provide employment for craftsmen. A temple worker mentions changes in ritual schedules that could affect market days. Caravan leaders discuss political developments in distant lands that might impact trade routes. This is how ordinary Babylonians stay informed about the larger forces that shape their lives, through the organic network of human connection that flourishes in these evening gathering places. The women present, though fewer in number than the men, participate fully in the tavern's social life. Some are tavern keepers or servers, their profession giving them a unique position in Babylonian society as independent business operators. Others are craftswomen, textile workers, or the wives of merchants, their presence indicating the relatively high status that Babylonian women enjoyed compared to their counterparts in many other ancient civilizations. Their conversations reveal concerns that transcend gender boundaries, the health and education of children, the management of household resources, the maintenance of family relationships across extended kinship networks. You observe the ritual, aspects of beer consumption that distinguish it from mere drinking. When someone purchases a round for friends, the act becomes a ceremony of friendship and mutual obligation. When travelers from distant cities are welcomed with hospitality, sharing beer becomes a symbol of Babylonian civility, extending beyond tribal or regional loyalties. When disputes are settled or agreements reached, the sealing cup of beer transforms a simple business transaction into a sacred bond that involves the gods themselves. Witnesses. The lighting in the tavern has become more intimate as some lamps burn lower or are extinguished to conserve oil. The remaining flames cast a warm, golden glow that softens faces and creates an atmosphere conducive to the kind of deep conversation. It can only occur when people feel truly safe and accepted. In these pools of gentle light, strangers become friends. Business relationships deepen into personal bonds, and the harsh realities of ancient life temporarily recede before the human capacity for joy and connection. As midnight approaches, you can sense a subtle change in the tavern's energy. Some patrons begin to settle their accounts and prepare for the journey home through darkened streets. Their day beginning before dawn with the demands of work and family. Others, particularly the younger and less encumbered, show no signs of ending their evening revelry. The tavern keeper, experienced in managing these rhythms, begins the gradual process of encouraging departure without seeming inhospitable, offering small portions of food to those who have drunk heavily, ensuring that no one leaves her establishment unable to navigate safely through the city's winding passages. The conversations have become more philosophical as the night progresses, touching on questions that have puzzled human beings since the dawn of consciousness. What is the purpose of human existence in a universe governed by capricious gods? How should one live in the face of an inevitable death? What obligations do we owe to our families, our community, our rulers? These are not abstract academic discussions, but urgent personal questions that every Babylonian must answer for themselves. And the beer-warmed atmosphere of the tavern provides a safe space for exploring these fundamental concerns without fear of judgment or ridicule. Outside, the city has grown quieter, though never completely silent. The guards continue their vigilant patrols, their footsteps echoing off the massive walls that protect this island of civilization in an often hostile world. Nightbirds call from the gardens that flourish in the spaces between buildings, their songs blending with the distant sound of water flowing through the canal system that brings life to this desert metropolis. These external sounds serve as a gentle reminder that beyond the tavern's intimate circle lies a vast and complex world, filled with both wonder and danger, beauty and brutality. In these deepest hours of the night, when most of the civilized world has surrendered to sleep, the tavern takes on an almost sacred quality. The remaining patrons have achieved that particular state of relaxed intimacy that can only emerge when people have moved beyond superficial pleasantries into genuine human connection. The beer has done its work, not merely as an intoxicant, but as a social lubricant, dissolving the barriers that daylight propriety normally maintains between individuals of different social stations, different trades, different backgrounds. You find yourself drawn into conversations that reveal the profound wisdom that ordinary Babylonians possess about the human condition. An elderly craftsman, his hands permanently stained by decades of working with bronze and copper, speaks with quiet authority about the nature of time and permanence. He has spent his life creating objects designed to last for generations, understanding in his bones the relationship between human effort and enduring legacy. His words carry the weight of someone who has witnessed the rise and fall of political dynasties, the construction and decay of great buildings, the birth and death of countless individuals, all while continuing to practice his ancient craft with undiminished skill and dedication. Beside him, a younger man listens with the respectful attention that Babylonian culture demands when elders share their accumulated knowledge. This is how wisdom passes from generation to generation in a society that values experience and respects the lessons learned through decades of navigating life's complexities. The young man asks thoughtful questions, not challenging the older craftsman's authority, but seeking to understand the deeper principles that underlie his observations about human nature and social organization. The conversations flowing around you reveal how Babylonians understand their place in the cosmic order. These are people who live under stars they have mapped with scientific precision, whose priests and astronomers have calculated the movements of celestial bodies with accuracy that will not be surpassed for millennia. Yet, their relationship with the universe is not merely mathematical, but deeply spiritual, recognizing forces and patterns that transcend human comprehension, while still affecting every aspect of daily life. Merchant, who has traveled extensively throughout the known world, shares observations about the different ways various peoples organize their societies, worship their gods, and structure their family relationships. His tales reveal not the narrow parochialism you might expect from ancient peoples, but rather a sophisticated appreciation for cultural diversity and adaptation. He speaks of Egyptian pyramid builders, of nomadic desert tribes, of mountain peoples whose languages and customs differ radically from Babylonian norms, yet whose fundamental human needs and aspirations remain remarkably consistent across all boundaries of geography and culture. The tavern keeper, now moving more slowly as the evening's labors take their toll, continues to serve her remaining customers with the same gracious attention she showed hours earlier. Her establishment represents a form of democratic space rare in the ancient world, where social hierarchies temporarily dissolve in the face of shared humanity. Here, for a few precious hours, the rigid structures that govern daylight society become fluid, allowing for connections and conversations that would be impossible in more formal settings. As you observe the interactions around you, you begin to appreciate how alcohol functions in Babylonian society, not as an escape from reality, but as a gateway to deeper truths about human relationships and social bonds. The beer facilitates honest communication between people who must normally maintain careful facades, allows for the expression of emotions that daily survival requires them to suppress, and creates temporary communities of understanding that help individuals cope with the isolation and uncertainty that characterize human existence in any era. The music has evolved into something approaching meditation, with the lyre and drum creating patterns of sound that seem to mirror the rhythms of heartbeat and breathing. Some patrons have begun to nod in rhythm, not from intoxication, but from a kind of entranced appreciation for the mathematical relationships that govern both musical harmony and cosmic order. This is the same culture that produced the earliest known musical notation, that understood the connection between numerical ratios and pleasing sounds, that recognized music as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. In one corner of the tavern, a scribe practices his craft even in this relaxed setting. carefully forming cuneiform characters on a small clay tablet by the light of an oil lamp. He is not working, but rather sharing with fascinated observers the mysteries of written language, demonstrating how abstract thoughts can be captured in permanent form through the manipulation of wedge-shaped marks pressed into malleable clay. His audience asks eager questions about the process, revealing their recognition that literacy represents a form of power and immortality available to those who master its complexities. The philosophical discussions that emerge in these late hours touch on questions that transcend historical boundaries. How should individuals balance personal desires against community obligations? What constitutes a life well lived in a world where death can arrive without warning? How can human beings find meaning and purpose in the face of forces, natural disasters, political upheavals, economic fluctuations that remain largely beyond their control? These conversations reveal Babylonians as people grappling with the same fundamental existential questions that concern thoughtful individuals in every age. You notice how the tavern's atmosphere has created space for confessions and revelations that would never emerge in daylight conversations. Men speak honestly about their fears regarding their ability to provide for their families in an uncertain economic environment. Women discuss the challenges of maintaining household harmony when extended family relationships become strained by financial pressures or personality conflicts. Young people admit their anxieties about finding suitable marriage partners and establishing independent households in a society where economic stability requires careful planning and considerable luck. The beer continues to flow, but its consumption has become more ritualized and contemplative. Each cup is savored rather than quickly consumed, with drinkers taking time to appreciate the complex flavors that skilled brewing can achieve when traditional techniques are properly applied. The tavern keeper takes pride in explaining the subtle differences between various batches, how variations in grain quality, fermentation time, and added ingredients can create distinct taste profiles that reflect both seasonal changes and the brewer's artistic sensibilities. As the deepest part of the night settles over the city, you become aware of how the tavern functions as a kind of sanctuary where Babylonians can temporarily escape from the relentless demands of survival in an unforgiving environment. Outside these walls lie diseases that can kill within days, political conflicts that can destroy livelihoods overnight, natural disasters that can wipe out years of careful accumulation, social pressures that require constant vigilance to navigate successfully. Inside, however, human warmth and understanding create a pocket of safety where people can lower their guard and experience the joy that makes life worth living despite its inevitable hardships. The lighting has become even more intimate as some patrons contribute their own oil to keep lamps burning, a gesture of communal responsibility that demonstrates how shared resources enable collective enjoyment. The golden glow illuminates faces that have relaxed into expressions of genuine contentment, revealing the fundamental human capacity for happiness that transcends the particular circumstances of any historical period. These are people who work hard, face real dangers, and possess few material comforts by modern standards, yet who have discovered how to create moments of pure satisfaction through the simple act of gathering together in friendship and mutual support. The conversations have reached that level of depth where personal stories merge with universal themes. A canal worker describes his daily struggle with the engineering challenges of maintaining water flow, but his account becomes a meditation on the human relationship with natural forces. A textile weaver explains the intricate patterns she creates, but her description evolves into a philosophy about the way individual threads must work together to create something beautiful and functional. A merchant recounts his negotiations with difficult customers, but his tale illuminates broader principles about trust, reputation, and the delicate balance between self-interest and community welfare. As dawn approaches, still hours away, some patrons begin the gradual process of departure, settling their accounts with the tavern keeper and exchanging final words of friendship with their companions. Others show no inclination to end their evening, recognizing these gatherings as rare opportunities for the kind of human connection that makes the struggles of daily life bearable. The tavern keeper, experienced in managing these transitions, begins subtly encouraging departure while maintaining a warm atmosphere that keeps customers returning night after night. You observe the careful rituals surrounding departure. As friends make plans for future meetings, business associates finalize arrangements for upcoming collaborations, and acquaintances exchange the kind of personal information that transforms casual relationships into lasting friendships. These farewell ceremonies reveal how the tavern serves not merely as entertainment, but as a crucial institution for maintaining the social fabric that holds Babylonian civilization together. The music gradually fades into silence as the musicians pack away their instruments, but the melodies continue to resonate in the memories of those who heard them, carrying forward into dreams and daily routines. The emotional resonance that transforms mere existence into something approaching art. This is the genius of Babylonian culture, the understanding that human beings require beauty and meaning as much as they need food and shelter, and that providing opportunities for aesthetic experience is not a luxury, but a necessity for maintaining civilized society. As you prepare to leave this intimate gathering and venture back into the broader currents of Babylonian nightlife, you carry with you a deeper appreciation for the sophistication and humanity of these ancient people. They have created not just the world's first great urban civilization, but also the social institutions that enable individuals to find joy and connection despite the harsh realities of their historical circumstances. The tavern represents a democratic space where wisdom can be shared, friendships can be formed, and the human spirit can find expression, even in the face of forces that seem designed to crush individual hopes and aspirations. The transition from this intimate setting to the grander spectacles of Babylonian religious and cultural life awaits. But the warmth and understanding you have witnessed in this humble establishment will inform everything that follows, reminding you that beneath the impressive architecture and elaborate ceremonies lies a foundation of ordinary human relationships built on mutual respect, shared struggle, and the universal desire for connection and meaning. As you emerge from the intimate warmth of the tavern into the cool night air, you find yourself transported not just through space, but through time, to one of the most magnificent spectacles the ancient world has ever known. It is the season of Akitu, the Babylonian New Year festival, when the entire city transforms into a stage for elaborate ceremonies that blur the boundaries between earth and heaven, between mortal celebration and divine revelation. The humble pleasures of the tavern fade into memory as you are swept into a celebration that involves every soul within Babylon's mighty walls, from the lowly slave to the king himself, all participating in rituals that have been performed for over 1,000 years. The night sky above Babylon blazes with more than stars during Akitu. Thousands of torches line the processional routes, their flames creating rivers of light that flow through the city's carefully planned streets, like molten gold poured from the forges of the gods themselves. The air shimmers with heat and smoke, creating an otherworldly atmosphere where the familiar landmarks of daily life take on new meanings, becoming stations in a cosmic drama that reenacts the eternal struggle between order and chaos, light and darkness, civilization and the wild forces that constantly threaten to overwhelm human achievement. You position yourself along the sacred way, that magnificent boulevard that stretches from the Ishtar Gate to the heart of the city's religious district, where the great ziggurat of Etemenanki rises like a mountain built by human hands to bridge the gap between earth and sky. Around you, thousands of Babylonians have gathered, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames of countless torches, their voices creating a low murmur of anticipation that seems to rise from the very stones beneath your feet. This is not merely a parade or entertainment, but a sacred drama in which every participant, both performer and observer, plays a crucial role in ensuring the continued favor of the gods. The procession begins with a sound that seems to emerge from the depths of the earth itself. The deep, resonant boom of bronze drums that echoes off the city's walls and reverberates through your chest like a second heartbeat. These are not ordinary musical instruments, but sacred artifacts crafted by generations of skilled metalworkers. Their surfaces decorated with intricate reliefs depicting mythological scenes that tell the story of creation, destruction, and renewal that lies at the heart of Babylonian cosmology. The rhythm they establish is both hypnotic and urgent, calling forth from every corner of the city those who would witness the gods. Walking among mortals, following the drummers come the torchbearers, young men selected for their physical perfection and spiritual purity, their bodies gleaming with sacred oils that reflect the flames they carry. Each torch is a work of art in itself, crafted from precious woods and soaked in aromatic resins that fill the night air with clouds of fragrant smoke. As they pass, you catch glimpses of their faces, transformed by the solemnity of their role from ordinary youth into living embodiments of divine light. Their synchronized movements create patterns of illumination that shift and flow like liquid fire, transforming the procession route into a canvas where light and shadow paint images of cosmic significance. Behind the torchbearers march the musicians. But these are not the humble performers you encountered in the tavern. These are the temple's finest artists, masters of instruments, whose complexity and sophistication rival anything the modern world has produced. You hear the haunting melodies of silver flutes that seem to capture the whispered secrets of the wind, the intricate harmonies of multiple lyres whose strings have been tuned according to mathematical principles that reflect the music of the spheres themselves. Bronze cymbals crash with sounds that echo like thunder, while wooden drums of various sizes create rhythmic patterns that mirror the heartbeat of the universe. The music they perform is not entertainment, but sacred literature given audible form. These melodies carry within them the accumulated wisdom of centuries, musical phrases that encode religious teachings, historical narratives, and prophetic visions in forms that can be transmitted from generation to generation without the need for written texts. As you listen, you begin to recognize recurring themes and variations, understanding that what appears to be a single, continuous performance is actually a complex tapestry of interconnected compositions, each one contributing to an overall narrative that tells the story of divine intervention in human affairs. Now come the priests, arranged in strict hierarchical order that reflects not just their positions within the temple bureaucracy, but the cosmic order itself. The junior clergy walk first, young men whose freshly shaved heads gleam in the torchlight, their simple white robes moving in rhythm with their careful steps. They carry implements of ritual purification, bowls of sacred water drawn from springs blessed by the gods, bundles of herbs whose aromatic smoke drives away malevolent spirits, small clay figurines representing protective deities whose presence ensures the ceremony's spiritual efficacy. Behind them march the senior priests, distinguished by robes of increasing elaborateness that indicate their proximity to the divine mysteries. Their garments are works of art that rival anything produced in the royal workshops, woven from the finest materials and decorated with symbols whose meanings are known only to those initiated into the deepest levels of religious knowledge. Some wear headdresses that transform them into living representations of specific deities, their human features hidden behind masks of gold and silver that capture the terrible beauty of divine faces too magnificent for mortal eyes to behold directly. The high priest himself walks at the center of this sacred procession, but he has transcended ordinary human identity to become something far more significant. His robes shimmer with threads of gold and silver, decorated with precious stones, arranged in patterns that mirrored the constellation of stars under which Babylon was founded. His face, when visible beneath the elaborate headdress he wears, has taken on an expression of otherworldly serenity, as if he has already departed the realm of mundane concerns to commune directly with the forces that govern human destiny. But true climax of the procession is yet to come. Following the priests come the sacred images, the physical representations of the gods themselves, carried on elaborately decorated platforms that require dozens of men to lift and transport. These are not mere statues, but vessels through which divine power flows into the human world, objects of such sacred significance that their very presence transforms ordinary space into holy ground. Each image has been crafted by mastered artisans working under strict religious supervision, using materials of surpassing purity and beauty to create forms that capture something of the essence of beings whose true nature transcends all physical representation. The statue of Marduk, king of the gods and patron deity of Babylon, dominates the procession like a mountain of gold and precious stones. His image has been crafted to convey both divine majesty and benevolent protection, his features combining human characteristics with symbolic elements that indicate his cosmic authority. The precious materials from which he has been constructed, gold from distant lands, silver from mountain mines, gemstones whose colors reflect the rainbow bridge between earth and heaven, represent the wealth of an entire empire offered in tribute to the power that makes civilization possible. Around Marduk's platform dance performers whose movements tell the story of his victories over the forces of chaos and disorder. These are not ordinary entertainers, but trained specialists whose every gesture has religious significance, whose costumes and choreography have been developed through centuries of tradition to create visual narratives that make abstract theological concepts accessible to ordinary believers. Their performance combines athletic skill with spiritual discipline, creating a spectacle that is simultaneously beautiful and deeply meaningful as the divine images pass before you, carried by teams of priests whose careful synchronization ensures that the gods travel smoothly through their earthly domain. You become aware of the profound silence that has fallen over the vast crowd. Thousands of people line the processional route. Their voices have stilled to allow the divine presence to pass unimpeded by human noise. This silence is not empty, but full, charged with the collective reverence of an entire population, united in recognition of forces greater than themselves. The procession moves with deliberate slowness, allowing every observer to fully appreciate the magnificence of each element, while also creating space for the contemplation that such sacred spectacles are designed to inspire. This is not a hurried parade, but a carefully orchestrated journey that transforms ordinary city streets into a cosmic pathway where divine and human realms intersect. The measured pace allows the enormous crowd to participate not just as passive observers, but as active contributors to the spiritual energy that makes such ceremonies effective. You notice how the light from thousands of torches creates constantly shifting patterns of illumination that transform familiar architectural features into something entirely new. The walls of buildings become canvases for dancing shadows, while doorways and windows frame momentary tableau as the procession passes. The very stones of the streets seem to glow with reflected firelight, creating the impression that the earth itself has been sanctified by the passage of divine presences. The air fills with aromatic smoke from burning incense, creating clouds of fragrant vapor that drift over the crowd like visible prayers ascending toward heaven. These are not random fragrances, but carefully selected combinations of resins, herbs, and spices that have specific religious associations, each scent designed to evoke particular emotional and spiritual responses in those who breathe them. The smoke also serves practical purposes, purifying the air through which the sacred images travel and creating a barrier between the divine procession and any contaminating influences that might compromise the ceremony's effectiveness. As the procession continues its stately progress through the city, you become aware of how the entire urban landscape has been transformed into a stage for this sacred drama. Every intersection provides a new vantage point for viewing the spectacle, while the careful arrangement of torches creates multiple layers of illumination that reveal different aspects of the ceremony from different perspectives. The architects who planned Babylon understood that the city would serve not just as a place of residence and commerce, but as a theater for religious celebrations that required specific spatial relationships to achieve their full impact. The procession reaches its magnificent crescendo as it approaches the sacred precinct surrounding the great ziggurat of Edamanaki, whose massive form looms against the star-filled sky like a man-made mountain designed to support the very heavens themselves. Here, in the heart of Babylon's religious life, the night reveals its most profound mysteries as thousands of additional torches burst into flame along the ziggurat's terrace levels, creating a pyramid of light that can be seen from villages dozens of miles beyond the city walls. The sight is so overwhelming that many in the crowd fall to their knees in spontaneous worship, understanding that they are witnessing not merely human ceremony, but divine revelation made manifest in fire and stone. The ziggurat itself represents the pinnacle of Babylonian architectural achievement, rising in 7 distinct levels that correspond to the 7 known planets and the divine forces they represent. Each terrace has been carefully designed according to mathematical principles that reflect cosmic harmonies, with measurements and proportions that mirror the relationships between celestial bodies as understood by Babylonian astronomers. Tonight, as flames illuminate every level of this sacred structure, you can appreciate how the ancient builders created not just a building, but a physical representation of the universe itself, a place where human beings can literally ascend toward divine realms. As the procession enters the sacred precinct, its very air seems to change, becoming thick with spiritual significance and heavy with the weight of centuries of accumulated prayer and worship. The ground beneath your feet has been sanctified by countless generations of pilgrims, priests, and kings who have walked these same paths in pursuit of divine favor and cosmic understanding. Every stone has been placed with religious purpose, every pathway designed to facilitate the movement of both human worshippers and divine energies that flow between earthly and heavenly realms. The platform bearers carrying the sacred images began their careful ascent of the ziggurat's ramps, their movements becoming even more deliberate and ceremonial as they approach the summit, where the most sacred rituals will be performed. You watch as teams of 30 or 40 men coordinate their efforts with precision that speaks to years of grueling training and preparation, understanding that a single misstep could not only damage priceless sacred artifacts, but also bring divine pleasure upon the entire city. Their faces strained with physical effort, but their expressions remain serene with spiritual focus, demonstrating the combination of human skill and divine assistance that makes such monumental undertakings possible. The music that accompanies this ascent takes on qualities that seem to transcend ordinary human artistic achievement. Temple musicians positioned at various levels of the ziggurat create layers of harmony that rise and fall like musical architecture, with melodies that seem to spiral upward in imitation of the structure itself. The acoustics of the terrace building amplify and modify these sounds in ways that the original architects clearly intended, creating ethereal effects that make the music seem to descend from heaven even as it rises from human instruments. As you follow the crowd into the sacred precinct, you become aware of the elaborate preparations that have transformed this space into something far more than an architectural monument. Craftsmen have spent months creating decorative elements specifically for this celebration, tapestries woven with threads of gold and silver that hang from the ziggurat's walls, floral arrangements using rare plants gathered from throughout the empire, sculptural installations that represent mythological scenes relevant to the New Year's cosmic themes. Every surface has been cleaned, polished, and decorated until the entire complex gleams like a jewel in the torchlight. The crowd itself has become part of the sacred spectacle, with thousands of Babylonians arranged in careful patterns that reflect social hierarchies while also creating visual designs that can be appreciated from the ziggurat's upper levels. Nobles occupy positions closest to the central processional route, or elaborate costumes, adding splashes of color and richness to the scene. Merchants and skilled craftsmen fill the middle areas, their presence representing the economic prosperity that makes such celebrations possible. Common laborers and farmers crowd the outer areas, but their participation is no less essential. Their voices joining in the collective prayers and songs that create the spiritual atmosphere necessary for successful divine communication. You notice how children have been incorporated into the ceremony, not as passive observers, but as active participants whose presence represents the continuity of Babylonian civilization and the transmission of religious traditions to future generations. Young boys, dressed in miniature versions of priestly robes, serve as torchbearers and incense carriers, while girls, wearing white robes, scatter flower petals along the processional route. Their involvement ensures that the religious knowledge and emotional connections formed during such events will be carried forward, maintaining the cultural coherence that holds Babylonian society together across generations. The sacred images finally reach the ziggurat's summit, where the most mysterious and significant portions of the ceremony will unfold away from public view. Only the highest-ranking priests are permitted to witness the rituals performed. The temple chambers at the building's peak, where divine statues are bathed, clothed in fresh garments, and offered elaborate meals as if they were living beings requiring physical sustenance. These private ceremonies represent the most intimate moments of divine human interaction, when the gods are believed to actually inhabit their earthly representations and communicate directly with their chosen intermediaries. While the secret rituals proceed above, the vast crowd below participates in their own forms of worship that create a foundation of collective spiritual energy to support the priests' more specialized activities. Thousands of voices join in ancient hymns whose melodies have been passed down through countless generations, creating harmonies that seem to make the very air vibrate with religious devotion. The songs tell stories of creation and renewal, of divine victories over chaotic forces, of the eternal covenant between gods and humans that ensures cosmic order and earthly prosperity. The torchlight creates constantly shifting patterns of illumination that transform the ziggurat into a beacon visible throughout the known world. Travelers in distant lands will report seeing the glow on the horizon and knowing that Babylon celebrates the triumph of civilization over barbarism, of order over chaos, of divine favor over human uncertainty. This visibility serves both practical and symbolic purposes, demonstrating Babylonian power while also inviting divine attention from celestial realms where the gods observe human affairs and decide whether to grant continued blessing or withdraw their protection as the night progresses. You become aware of how the ceremony affects not just those directly participating, but the entire urban environment. The light from thousands of torches illuminates the city far beyond the sacred precinct, revealing architectural details normally hidden in darkness and creating an otherworldly atmosphere that transforms familiar surroundings into something approaching paradise. Gardens and courtyards that remain invisible during ordinary nights burst into visible beauty, their carefully tended plants and artistic arrangements contributing to the overall impression of a city touched by divine favor. The air circulation patterns created by so many burning torches carry the sounds of celebration throughout Babylon's residential districts, ensuring that even those unable to attend the central ceremonies can participate through hearing the music and prayers that echo off the city's walls. Elderly citizens, too frail for crowd participation, mothers caring for infants, workers whose duties require them to remain at their posts. All become part of the celebration through this acoustic connection that unites the entire population in shared religious experience. Water features throughout the city reflected torchlight, creating secondary illumination that multiplies the visual impact of the celebration. Canals, fountains, and artificial pools become mirrors that double the apparent number of flames while also symbolizing the life-giving properties of divine blessing. The interplay between fire and water creates a visual metaphor for the cosmic balance that Babylonian religion seeks to maintain, with opposing forces working together to create harmony rather than engaging in destructive conflict. The elaborate costumes worn by participants create a display of textile artistry that represents months of preparation by the city's finest craftsmen. Priests wear robes embroidered with religious symbols whose meanings have been preserved in temple libraries for centuries, their garments serving as visual texts that communicate theological concepts to illiterate observers. Noble participants display clothing that demonstrates not just personal wealth, but also cultural sophistication, with patterns and decorations that reference historical events, mythological narratives, and astronomical observations. You observe how the ceremony creates temporary communities among strangers, as shared participation in sacred activities breaks down the social barriers that normally separate Babylonians according to economic status, professional specialization, or neighborhood residence. Families from different districts find themselves standing side by side, their children playing together while adults engage in conversations that would never occur during ordinary daily routines. These connections formed during religious celebrations help maintain social cohesion throughout the year, creating bonds of mutual recognition and responsibility that strengthen the civic fabric. The professional performers who contribute specialized skills to the celebration represent artistic traditions that stretch back to the earliest days of Mesopotamian civilization. Dancers whose movements tell mythological stories through precisely choreographed gestures. Musicians whose instrumental techniques require decades to master. Singers whose voices have been trained to project across vast crowds while maintaining perfect pitch and clarity. Their performances are not entertainment, but sacred labor that requires both technical excellence and spiritual dedication. As the secret rituals on the Ziggurat summit near completion, signs of divine approval begin to manifest in ways that convince even skeptical observers of the ceremony's spiritual efficacy. The wind patterns shift to carry the aromatic smoke from sacred fires in directions that seem to form symbolic shapes in the night sky. Stars that had been hidden by clouds suddenly become visible, creating celestial displays that appear to respond to earthly worship. Animals throughout the city, dogs, cats, domesticated birds, become unusually calm and peaceful, as if the spiritual energy radiating from the sacred precinct affects all living creatures within Babylon's walls. The priests begin their descent from the Ziggurat summit, carrying with them evidence of successful divine communication that will guide Babylonian policy and planning throughout the coming year. Their faces glow with more than reflective torchlight, bearing expressions of transcendent peace that convince observers they have indeed conversed with powers beyond human understanding. The sacred images they escort have been transformed through the rituals performed in the temple chambers, now radiating spiritual energy that makes them seem more alive and present than ordinary statues could ever appear. The procession's return journey through the city takes on different characteristics than its earlier ascent, with the triumphant joy of successful divine communication replacing the solemn anticipation that marked the ceremony's beginning. Music becomes more celebratory, with rhythms that encourage spontaneous dancing among crowd members. The careful formality of the initial procession gives way to expressions of genuine happiness and relief, as an entire population celebrates confirmation that their gods remain favorably disposed toward their collective welfare and individual prosperity. As the central procession concludes and the sacred images are reverently returned to their temple chambers. The true magic of Akitu begins to unfold throughout Babylon's countless neighborhoods, courtyards, and gathering spaces. What began as a carefully orchestrated religious ceremony now transforms into something far more organic and democratic, a citywide celebration that touches every life within the great walls, from the humblest slave quarters to the most magnificent palace courtyards. The formal structure of priestly ritual gives way to the irrepressible human need for joy, community, and shared meaning, creating a tapestry of celebration that weaves together all the threads of Babylonian society into a single, magnificent whole. You find yourself carried along by streams of celebrants flowing through the city's arterial streets like tributaries, feeding into a great river of human happiness. The rigid social hierarchies that normally govern Babylonian life have not disappeared, but they have become fluid and permeable, softened by the universal recognition that this night belongs to everyone equally. Nobles remove their elaborate headdresses and jewelry to dance with common laborers. Priests shed their formal robes to join in neighborhood celebrations. Children from wealthy families play games with the sons and daughters of canal workers and brickmakers. The gods, having blessed the entire city, have made all its inhabitants temporarily equal in their capacity for sacred joy. In the residential quarters near the eastern wall, families have transformed their modest courtyards into miniature festival grounds, hanging oil lamps from every available surface until the enclosed spaces glow like jewel boxes filled with warm light. Mothers who spent weeks preparing special foods for this occasion now proudly serve their finest creations to neighbors, relatives, and friendly strangers alike. The aromatic smoke rising from countless small cooking fires creates a fragrant cloud that drifts across the entire district, carrying with it the mingled scents of roasted barley, honey cakes sweetened with dates, and lamb seasoned with precious spices imported from distant lands. The music that fills these neighborhood celebrations reflects the authentic voice of Babylonian popular culture, freed from the formal constraints that govern temple performances. Street musicians who have practiced together informally throughout the year now gather in impromptu orchestras, their simple instruments creating melodies that speak directly to the hearts of ordinary people. Hand drums made from stretched animal hide beat rhythms that mirror the pulse of daily labor, while reed flutes capture the haunting beauty of wind across desert landscapes. Voices join together in songs that everyone knows, melodies passed down through generations of mothers singing to children, workers coordinating their efforts, and lovers expressing feelings too deep for ordinary words. You observe how different neighborhoods develop their own unique characteristics within the larger celebration, each community expressing the particular cultural identity that emerges from shared geography, occupation, and social relationships. The Potter's Quarter near the river features elaborate displays of ceremonial vessels created specifically for the festival. Their surfaces, decorated with painted designs that tell mythological stories through visual symbols, accessible to viewers who cannot read cuneiform writing. The Metalworkers District resonates with the carefully tuned chiming of bronze bells and cymbals, their craftsmen demonstrating the musical possibilities inherent in their professional materials. In the Merchants' Quarter, the celebration takes on cosmopolitan characteristics that reflect the international nature of Babylonian trade. Syrian traders contribute exotic instruments whose unfamiliar sounds add mysterious beauty to familiar melodies. Egyptian merchants share incense and perfumes that create aromatic clouds unlike anything produced locally. Traders from the mountain regions bring textiles and decorative objects that introduce new visual elements into the festival's aesthetic vocabulary. These foreign contributions are not merely tolerated, but eagerly welcomed, demonstrating the cultural confidence of a civilization secure enough in its own identity to embrace external influences without fear of contamination or loss. The canal districts, where families live in close proximity due to the engineering requirements of water management, develop particularly intimate celebrations that emphasize the cooperative spirit necessary for maintaining the irrigation systems that sustain Babylonian agriculture. Here, entire extended family networks gather in communal celebrations that span multiple courtyards, with temporary bridges and walkways constructed to connect separate residential compounds into single festival venues. Children who normally play in small, confined spaces suddenly find themselves with vast areas to explore, while adults who rarely have time for extensive socializing enjoy rare opportunities for lengthy conversations with relatives and neighbors. As you move through these various neighborhood celebrations, you've become aware of how the festival serves crucial social functions that extend far beyond religious observance. Young men and women who have reached marriageable age use these gatherings as opportunities to meet potential partners, their families subtly facilitating introductions while maintaining the careful negotiations surround matrimonial arrangements in Babylonian society. Skilled craftsmen display their finest work to potential customers. Understanding that festival gatherings provide ideal marketing opportunities when people are in generous moods and disposed to make purchases, business partnerships are formed, debts are forgiven, disputes are resolved, and social bonds are strengthened through the shared experience of communal celebration. The transformation of ordinary spaces into festival venues demonstrates the remarkable creativity and resourcefulness that characterizes Babylonian culture. Rooftops become stages for performers who can project their voices across multiple courtyards simultaneously. Narrow alleyways are decorated with hanging banners and streamers that create intimate procession routes for neighborhood parades. Wells and fountains become centers for impromptu gatherings where neighbors share news, gossip, and refreshments, while children play games that have been traditional components of Akitu celebrations for generations beyond memory. Food plays a central role in these neighborhood festivities, with families competing to demonstrate their hospitality through the abundance and quality of refreshments they provide. Women who have saved precious ingredients throughout the year now use them to create elaborate dishes that showcase both their culinary skills and their family's prosperity. Beer flows freely from clay vessels decorated with festival motifs, while children enjoy sweet treats made from honey dates and nuts that will remain precious memories throughout their adult lives. The sharing of food becomes a form of communion that binds neighbors together in mutual obligation and affection. The lighting effects created by thousands of small oil lamps throughout the residential districts produce a magical atmosphere that transforms familiar surroundings into something approaching fairyland. Every window glows with warm illumination. Every doorway frames scenes of domestic happiness. Every courtyard becomes a theater where ordinary families perform the drama of human joy. The interplay between interior and exterior lighting creates constantly shifting patterns of brightness and shadow that make the entire city appear to breathe with collective life. Children experience these festival nights as initiation into the mysteries of adult community life, observing social interactions and cultural traditions that will shape their understanding of what it means to be Babylonian. They participate in special games and activities designed to teach them religious stories and historical narratives through play, ensuring that cultural knowledge is transmitted in forms that create positive emotional associations. Young girls learn traditional dances that they will perform at future festivals, while boys practice musical instruments and storytelling techniques that will enable them to contribute to community celebrations throughout their lives. That the elderly find themselves honored guests at every gathering, their presence representing continuity with past generations and wisdom accumulated through decades of festival participation. Their stories of previous celebrations provide historical context that enriches current experiences, while their blessings and predictions for the coming year carry special authority derived from their proximity to the ancestral spirits who continue to influence family welfare. The festival creates opportunities for intergenerational bonding that strengthen family structures and ensure the transmission of cultural values. Women, who often find their daily lives constrained by domestic responsibilities and social conventions, discover temporary liberation in the festival's democratic atmosphere. They organize and manage neighborhood celebrations, demonstrating leadership skills that are rarely visible during ordinary periods. They perform traditional songs and dances that preserve feminine cultural traditions passed down through maternal lineages. They engage in social interactions that transcend normal boundaries of class and economic status, forming friendships and alliances that will provide mutual support throughout the coming year. The festival's duration, lasting for multiple days and nights, allows for the development of celebration fatigue that paradoxically deepens rather than diminishes the event's significance. As initial excitement gives way to sustained participations, celebrants must draw upon reserves of spiritual and emotional energy that connect them to fundamental sources of meaning and purpose. The experience becomes transformative rather than merely entertaining, creating lasting changes in individual perspectives and community relationships. Religious observances continue throughout the neighborhood celebrations, but they take on more personal and intimate characteristics than the grand public ceremonies at the ziggurat. Families gather around household shrines to offer private prayers and thanksgiving, acknowledging divine favor in terms of their specific circumstances and needs. Children learn simplified versions of mythological stories that help them understand their place in cosmic order. Adults discuss theological questions and ethical principles in ways that make abstract religious concepts relevant to daily life decisions. The festival's economic impact extends throughout Babylonian society, creating opportunities for prosperity that benefit everyone from wealthy merchants to humble street vendors. Craftsmen who have worked throughout the year to create festival-specific products now reap the rewards of their labor and artistic skill. Food vendors experience their most profitable period, while entertainers and musicians find eager audiences willing to compensate their performances generously. The circulation of money and goods during festival periods helps maintain economic vitality and provides financial resources that sustain individuals and families during leaner times. As dawn approaches, the neighborhood celebrations begin to wind down, but the process is gradual and reluctant, with participants unwilling to surrender the magic that has transformed their ordinary lives into something approaching paradise. Final toasts are offered, last songs are sung, and promises are made to maintain the friendships and connections that have been strengthened through shared celebration. Children are carried home sleeping, their dreams filled with music and laughter that will influence their understanding of what human community can achieve when united in common purpose. That the cleanup that follows these celebrations becomes itself a form of community activity, with neighbors working together to restore their shared spaces while reminiscing about the events they have just experienced. The physical traces of festival activity are removed, but the emotional and spiritual impacts remain, creating lasting changes in community dynamics and individual perspectives. The ordinary routine of daily life will resume, but it will be enriched by memories of transcendent joy and enhanced by social bonds that have been deepened through shared participation in sacred celebration. As you prepare to leave these neighborhood festivities and explore other aspects of Babylonian nightlife, you carry with you a profound appreciation for the sophisticated understanding these ancient people possessed about the relationship between individual happiness and community welfare. They had discovered that true celebration requires not just personal pleasure, but collective participation, not just temporary entertainment, but lasting transformation of social relationships and spiritual understanding. The celebrations fade into memory as you find yourself transported through time to the careful excavation sites where modern archaeologists have painstakingly uncovered the material remnants of Babylonian musical culture, their discoveries revealing a sophisticated artistic tradition that challenges every Assumption about the limitations of ancient technology and aesthetic understanding. In the quiet spaces where scholars work with brushes and measuring tools, fragments of clay tablets and corroded bronze instruments whisper secrets about nighttime entertainment that flourished along the Euphrates over 3 millennia ago. Each artifact representing a window into forms of human expression that seemed lost forever until patient excavation brought them back into the light. The Royal Cemetery of Ur, excavated in the early 20th century by Leonard Woolley's expedition, yielded treasures that revolutionized scholarly understanding of Mesopotamian musical achievement. In the tomb of Queen Plabi, archaeologists discovered a magnificent golden lyre whose restoration required years of careful work to understand the construction, techniques, and materials that ancient craftsmen had employed. The instrument's soundbox, decorated with intricate inlays of lapis lazuli and shell set in bitumen, demonstrates artistic sophistication that rivals anything produced in later periods of human history. When modern instrument makers attempted to reconstruct the lyre according to archaeological evidence, the resulting sounds revealed acoustic properties that suggest these ancient musicians understood harmonic relationships with mathematical precision. The complexity of instruments found in Mesopotamian sites defies simplistic assumptions about primitive ancient cultures. Silver flutes discovered in various locations show evidence of careful tuning holes positioned according to specific mathematical ratios that produce scales remarkably similar to modern Western musical systems. Drums of various sizes. Their wooden bodies, long since decayed, but their bronze fittings, preserved in museum collections, indicate rhythmic traditions of extraordinary sophistication. Cymbals, bells, and other percussion instruments reveal metallurgical techniques that produced instruments capable of generating precise pitches and complex overtone patterns. Perhaps most remarkably, archaeologists have discovered cuneiform tablets that appear to contain the world's earliest known musical notation, dating from approximately 1400 BCE at the ancient site of Ugarit in Syria, reflecting musical traditions that clearly originated in Babylonian cultural centers. These tablets, painstakingly translated by scholars who had to decipher both the linguistic and musical codes they contained, reveal a systematic approach to recording melodies that enabled musicians to preserve and transmit specific compositions across generations. The notation system, while different from modern musical writing, demonstrates logical principles for indicating pitch relationships, rhythm patterns, and performance instructions that allowed ancient musicians to achieve remarkable consistency in their performances. The archaeological evidence suggests that Babylonian musical culture operated on multiple levels of sophistication simultaneously. While common people enjoyed simple folk melodies played on basic instruments crafted from readily available materials, wealthy elites and religious institutions supported professional musicians who created complex compositions using instruments of extraordinary refinement. Royal workshops employed specialists whose sole responsibility was crafting musical instruments, using precious materials imported from throughout the known world. The golden lyres, silver flutes, and bronze bells found in elite burial contexts represent only the most durable remnants of musical traditions that probably included instruments made from organic materials that have not survived the passage of millennia. Excavations at various Mesopotamian sites have revealed architectural features that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of acoustic principles. Temple chambers contain design elements clearly intended to enhance musical performance through careful attention to sound reflection and amplification. Palace complexes include rooms whose proportions and surface treatments suggest they were specifically designed as concert halls where professional musicians performed for aristocratic audiences. Even ordinary residential areas show evidence of acoustic considerations, with courtyards and gathering spaces arranged to facilitate musical activities during social celebrations. Workshops where musical instruments were manufactured have left archaeological traces that illuminate the complex supply chains and specialized knowledge required to support Babylonian musical culture. Furnaces designed for smelting precious metals show evidence of having been used to create alloys with specific acoustic properties. Stone tools, clearly designed for woodworking, demonstrate techniques for shaping resonating chambers and installing string attachments. Molds for casting bronze components reveal standardized production methods that enabled musicians throughout the Mesopotamian region to use instruments with compatible tuning systems. Perhaps most intriguingly, archaeological evidence suggests that musical performance was closely integrated with other forms of artistic expression in ways that created multimedia experiences of remarkable sophistication. Tablets containing musical notation often include instructions for accompanying dance movements, indicating that Babylonian entertainment frequently combined auditory and visual elements into unified artistic presentations. Religious texts describe ceremonies where music, dance, theatrical performance, and visual arts merged into spectacular productions that engaged multiple senses simultaneously. The preservation of organic materials in certain archaeological contexts has provided glimpses of musical elements that normally disappear without trace. Leather drumheads, found in exceptionally dry conditions, reveal construction techniques and decorative patterns that demonstrate the aesthetic sophistication applied even to components that audiences would never see directly. Fragments of wooden instruments show evidence of inlay work and surface decoration that indicate even utilitarian musical equipment was created with artistic sensibility that extended far beyond mere functional requirements. Analysis of residues found on ancient instruments has revealed surprising information about performance practices and maintenance techniques. Chemical traces suggest that musicians used various substances to modify the sounds their instruments produced, applying resins and oils to alter acoustic properties according to specific musical requirements. Evidence of repairs and modifications indicates that valuable instruments were maintained and updated throughout long periods of use, suggesting that musical equipment represented significant economic investments that required careful preservation. The geographic distribution of similar instruments across Mesopotamian sites demonstrates the existence of cultural networks that facilitated the transmission of musical knowledge and technology across vast distances. Instruments found in Babylon show clear similarities to examples discovered in Assyrian sites hundreds of miles to the north, indicating shared musical traditions that transcended political boundaries. Trade routes that carried precious materials for instrument construction also served as conduits for musical ideas and performance techniques that created cultural connections between distant urban centers. Archaeological evidence reveals that musical education was a formal component of Babylonian elite culture, with specialized schools that trained professional musicians according to standardized curricula. Clay tablets containing musical exercises and theoretical discussions demonstrate systematic approaches to teaching instrumental techniques in musical composition. The existence of musical libraries within temple complexes suggests that written musical knowledge was preserved and transmitted with the same scholarly attention devoted to religious texts and administrative records. The tools and materials used in musical instrument construction reveal technological capabilities that challenge assumptions about ancient manufacturing limitations. Bronze alloys found in Babylonian instruments show evidence of sophisticated metallurgy that produced materials with acoustic properties superior to those achieved by many later civilizations. Joinery techniques used in wooden instruments demonstrate woodworking skills that enabled the creation of complex resonating chambers with precise acoustic characteristics. Even simple instruments show evidence of engineering principles that maximized sound production while minimizing material requirements. Excavations of performance venues have revealed architectural, acoustics that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and audience psychology. Theater spaces include design features that directed sound toward specific seating areas while creating acoustic environments that enhanced the emotional impact of musical performances. Temple courtyards show evidence of careful planning to create natural amphitheaters where large audiences could participate in musical, religious ceremonies. Even private residential spaces include acoustic considerations that suggest musical performance was an expected component of domestic social life. The preservation of textile fragments associated with musical performances provides insights into the visual components of Babylonian musical culture. Costumes worn by musicians show evidence of elaborate decoration and symbolic meaning that transform performers into visual representations of mythological characters and divine beings. The integration of specific colors, patterns, and materials into performance attire demonstrates that musical entertainment was conceived as total artistic experience that engaged audiences through multiple sensory channels simultaneously. Perhaps most remarkably, recent archaeological discoveries have revealed evidence of experimental musical instruments that suggest Babylonian musicians were actively innovating and developing new forms of musical expression. Unique instruments found in workshop contexts appear to represent attempts to expand the sonic possibilities available to performers, indicating that ancient musical culture was dynamic and creative rather than merely traditional and conservative. These experimental instruments demonstrate that Babylonian musicians possessed both the technical knowledge and artistic ambition necessary to push the boundaries of their musical traditions. The chemical analysis of materials used in instrument construction has revealed trade networks of extraordinary complexity that brought exotic materials from throughout the ancient world to Babylonian workshops. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, silver from Anatolia, gold from Egypt, and precious woods from Lebanon all found their way into musical instruments that represented the wealth and cultural sophistication of Mesopotamian civilization. The willingness to invest such valuable materials in musical equipment demonstrates the high status that musical culture held within Babylonian society. Archaeological evidence suggests that musical performance was not confined to formal venues but permeated all aspects of Babylonian urban life. Small instruments found in residential contexts indicate that ordinary families owned musical equipment for domestic entertainment. Workshop areas show evidence of musical activity during work periods, suggesting that music served functional purposes in coordinating labor and maintaining worker morale. Even military sites have yielded musical instruments, indicating that music played roles in warfare and military organization that extended beyond simple entertainment. The clay tablets rest in climate-controlled museum cases, their surfaces covered with the wedge-shaped impressions that once carried the living breath of Babylonian singers across millennia of silence. These cuneiform documents, painstakingly excavated from temple libraries and palace archives, represent some of humanity's earliest preserved song lyrics, offering unprecedented insight into the emotional and spiritual landscapes that Babylonian musicians explored during their nocturnal performances. As scholars worked for decades to decipher these ancient texts, they discovered not primitive chants or simple folk melodies, but sophisticated poetic compositions that reveal psychological depth and artistic complexity worthy of any literary tradition. In human history, the translation process itself represents a detective story of remarkable complexity. As linguists and musicologists collaborated to unlock meaning from symbols that had remained mute for over 2,000 years, the cuneiform writing system, originally developed for recording economic transactions and administrative documents, proved remarkably adaptable for capturing the nuances of poetic language and musical instruction. Scribes developed specialized notation techniques for indicating vocal inflections, rhythmic patterns, and instrumental accompaniments that enabled precise preservation of performance, traditions that would otherwise have vanished with their original practitioners. Among the most significant discoveries are the Sumerian hymns to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, whose worship ceremonies included elaborate musical performances that combined sacred ritual with passionate emotional expression. These texts reveal song cycles of extraordinary sophistication, with multiple movements that explore different aspects of divine feminine power through varying musical moods and poetic imagery. The hymns describe nighttime ceremonies where priestesses embodied the goddess through dance and song, creating theatrical performances that transformed temple spaces into realms where divine and human consciousness merged through artistic transcendence. The love songs preserved on Mesopotamian tablets demonstrate emotional sophistication that rivals the finest poetry of any culture. These compositions, apparently performed during wedding celebrations and private intimate gatherings, explore themes of desire, longing, joy, and heartbreak with psychological insight that speaks across cultural and temporal boundaries. The language employed combines earthly metaphors drawn from agricultural and urban life with cosmic imagery that places human, romantic experience within larger frameworks of divine creativity and natural cycles. One particularly remarkable text describes a singer's performance in a palace courtyard under starlight, her voice accompanied by a silver-stringed lyre, and she tells the story of a goddess who descends to the underworld in search of her beloved. The lyrics contain performance instructions indicating specific vocal techniques for different emotional passages, whispered confidences during intimate sections, full-throated declarations during triumphant moments, trembling uncertainty during passages describing separation and loss. These directions suggest that Babylonian musical performance operated according to sophisticated aesthetic principles that recognized music's power to communicate complex emotional states through technical manipulation of sound and silence. The religious music texts reveal theological concepts of remarkable depth, with songs that explore humanity's relationship to divine power through metaphors that remain powerful and relevant. Hymns to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, present elaborate theological arguments in poetic form, using musical structure to reinforce philosophical content through repetition, variation, and thematic development. These compositions functioned not merely as worship aids, but as teaching tools that transmitted complex religious knowledge through memorable melodies and rhythmic patterns that made abstract concepts accessible to ordinary believers. Archaeological evidence suggests that some tablets contain musical compositions designed specifically for nighttime performance, with lyrics that reference stars, moonlight, and the acoustic properties of darkness that enhance musical experience. These nocturnal songs often explore themes of mystery, revelation, and transformation that reflect the psychological changes that occur when human consciousness enters the altered states associated with evening relaxation and contemplation. The texts indicate that Babylonian musicians understood how darkness affects both performers and audiences, creating opportunities for artistic expression that would be impossible during daylight hours. The preservation of secular entertainment. Songs provides insight into the daily concerns and pleasures of ordinary Babylonians, with lyrics that reference work, family relationships, seasonal changes, and social celebrations. These compositions reveal sophisticated understanding of musical entertainment as social glue that binds communities together through shared emotional experience. Songs about harvest festivals describe elaborate multi-day celebrations where entire populations participated in musical activities that reinforced cultural identity and collective memory through artistic performance. Perhaps most intriguingly, some tablets contain what appear to be musical critiques and aesthetic discussions, with texts that analyze the emotional effects of different musical modes and instrumental combinations. These documents suggest that Babylonian culture included professional music critics and theorists who developed systematic approaches to to understanding musical beauty and effectiveness. Their discussions reveal awareness of music's psychological impact that anticipates modern research into the neurological effects of organized sound on human consciousness and emotional well-being. The technical vocabulary preserved in these musical texts demonstrates sophisticated understanding of acoustic principles and performance techniques that required extensive training to master. Terms for different types of vocal production, instrumental fingering patterns, and ensemble coordination reveal systematic approaches to musical education that enabled the transmission of complex artistic knowledge across generations. The existence of such specialized terminology indicates that musical culture in Babylon operated at professional levels that required both technical expertise and artistic sensitivity. Love laments, preserved on clay tablets, reveal the universal human experience of romantic loss expressed through musical forms that remain emotionally compelling despite their ancient origins. These songs describe midnight performances where singers channeled personal grief into artistic expression that provided cathartic release for both performers and audiences. The text suggests that Babylonian culture recognized music's therapeutic potential, understanding that organized sound could help individuals process difficult emotions and find meaning in experiences of loss and disappointment. The military songs found among cuneiform tablets reveal how music functioned in warfare and political contexts, with compositions designed to inspire courage, coordinate group movements, and celebrate victories over enemies. These martial hymns demonstrate that Babylonian musical culture extended beyond entertainment and religious worship to include practical applications in statecraft and military organization. The lyrics often combine historical narratives with mythological references that placed contemporary conflicts within cosmic frameworks that justified warfare as divine mandate. Children's songs, preserved in educational contexts, reveal sophisticated understanding of music's role in cultural transmission and childhood development. These simple compositions, designed to teach language skills, moral principles, and cultural knowledge through memorable melodies, demonstrate that Babylonian educators recognized music's exceptional effectiveness as a learning tool. The texts include performance instructions that suggest these educational songs were accompanied by physical movements and visual aids that created multimedia learning experiences for young people. The seasonal songs found in temple archives describe elaborate musical celebrations that marked important transitions in the agricultural and religious calendar. These compositions reveal how Babylonian culture used music to maintain synchronization between human social activities and natural cycles, creating shared experiences that reinforce collective identity while acknowledging dependence on forces beyond human control. The lyrics often combine practical information about farming and crafts with theological interpretations that found divine meaning in ordinary work and natural processes. Funeral songs preserved on cuneiform tablets reveal sophisticated approaches to processing grief and maintaining connections with deceased family members through musical ritual. These compositions describe nighttime ceremonies where mourners gathered to sing elaborate lamentations that honored the dead while providing emotional support for survivors. The texts indicate that Babylonian culture understood music's unique capacity to express feelings that exceed the limits of ordinary language, creating artistic forms that enabled communities to process collective trauma through shared aesthetic experience. The drinking songs found among secular texts reveal the social functions of alcohol consumption in Babylonian culture, with lyrics that celebrate friendship, commemorate shared experiences, and facilitate the kind of intimate conversation that requires relaxation of normal social inhibitions. These compositions suggest that Babylonian tavern culture operated according to sophisticated social protocols that used music to create temporary communities of understanding among individuals from different backgrounds and social positions. Perhaps most remarkably, some tablets contain what appear to be musical experiments and innovations, with compositions that explore unusual harmonic relationships and rhythmic patterns that suggest Babylonian musicians were actively developing new forms of artistic expression. These experimental pieces demonstrate that ancient musical culture was dynamic and creative rather than merely traditional, with artists who possessed both the technical knowledge and creative ambition necessary to expand the boundaries of their inherited artistic traditions. Preservation of performance notes and rehearsal. Instructions provides insight into the practical aspects of musical production in ancient Babylon, revealing complex organizational structures that enable large-scale musical events requiring coordination between multiple performers, technical specialists, and administrative personnel. These documents suggest that major musical performances represented significant cultural investments that required months of preparation and substantial economic resources to execute successfully. The analysis of linguistic patterns in musical texts reveals how Babylonian poets adapted spoken language for musical performance, developing specialized poetic techniques that maximize the emotional impact of words when combined with organized sound. These adaptations demonstrate sophisticated understanding of the relationship between linguistic meaning and musical expression that enabled composers to create integrated artistic experiences where words and music reinforced each other through careful coordination of semantic and sonic elements. The archaeological record reveals that Babylonian musical culture existed within a vast network of cultural exchange that stretched from the Mediterranean coast to the mountains of Iran, with trade routes serving as conduits not only for precious materials and manufactured goods, but also for artistic ideas and technical innovations that continuously enriched and transformed local musical traditions. The instruments, compositions, performance techniques discovered in Mesopotamian sites represent the culmination of centuries of cross-cultural fertilization. Babylonian musicians absorbed influences from neighboring civilizations while contributing their own innovations to a shared pool of artistic knowledge that transcended political boundaries and ethnic differences. The technological innovations that made Babylonian musical achievements possible required sophisticated understanding of materials, science, acoustics, and manufacturing techniques that challenge modern assumptions about ancient technological capabilities. The bronze alloys used in high-quality instruments, for example, demonstrate metallurgical knowledge that enabled craftsmen to create materials with specific acoustic properties tailored to particular musical requirements. Chemical analysis reveals that Babylonian metalworkers understood how varying the proportions of copper, tin, and trace elements could produce alloys that resonated at different frequencies, enabling the creation of matched sets of instruments tuned to compatible scales. The workshop organization that supported musical instrument production reveals economic and social structures of remarkable complexity, with specialized craftsmen working within guild systems that preserved technical knowledge while facilitating innovation and quality control. Archaeological evidence from craft quarters shows that instrument makers operated according to standardized production methods that enabled musicians throughout the Mesopotamian region to use equipment with compatible tuning systems and performance characteristics. These manufacturing standards suggest the existence of trade associations and regulatory mechanisms that maintain product quality while encouraging technical advancement. The mathematical principles underlying Babylonian musical theory, reconstructed from theoretical texts and analysis of surviving instruments, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of harmonic relationships that anticipates discoveries usually attributed to much later periods in human history. Cuneiform tablets containing numerical calculations related to musical intervals reveal that Babylonian theorists understood the mathematical ratios that produce consonant harmonies, enabling them to develop tuning systems that maximize the P acoustic compatibility between different instruments and vocal ranges. The architectural integration of musical performance spaces within larger building complexes demonstrates systematic planning that optimized acoustic properties while serving multiple social and religious functions. Palace and temple designs include chambers whose proportions and surface treatments were clearly calculated to enhance musical performance through strategic use of reflection, absorption, and resonance effects. These acoustic engineering achievements required understanding of sound propagation principles that enabled architects to create environments that supported everything from intimate solo performances to large-scale ceremonial presentations involving hundreds of participants. The preservation techniques that protected valuable instruments and musical texts reveal sophisticated understanding of materials conservation that enabled the transmission of cultural knowledge across centuries of political upheaval and social change. Temple libraries included climate-controlled storage areas designed to protect clay tablets from humidity fluctuations and temperature variations that could damage fragile cuneiform inscriptions. Instrument storage chambers featured environmental controls that prevented the corrosion and decay that would otherwise have destroyed precious musical equipment within decades of its creation. The educational systems that transmitted musical knowledge from master craftsmen to apprentices operated according to curricula that balanced theoretical understanding with practical skill development, ensuring that technical innovations were properly integrated with traditional artistic principles. Workshop training programs were constructed from surviving instructional texts and archaeological evidence of teaching facilities, reveal systematic approaches to musical education that enabled the preservation of complex technical knowledge, while encouraging creative experimentation and artistic growth. The international trade networks that supplied raw materials for instrument construction created economic relationships that facilitated cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale, with Babylonian merchants and craftsmen maintaining regular contact with suppliers and customers throughout the ancient world. Trade routes that brought precious metals from Anatolia, rare woods from Lebanon, and exotic materials from India also carried musical ideas and performance techniques that enriched local traditions, while spreading Babylonian innovations to distant lands. The religious and philosophical frameworks that gave meaning to musical activity reveal sophisticated understanding of music's psychological and spiritual effects that anticipates modern research into the neurological basis of aesthetic experience. Theological texts describe musical performance as a bridge between physical and spiritual realms, with specific techniques for using organized sound to induce altered states of consciousness, that facilitated divine communication and mystical revelation. These conceptual frameworks provided intellectual justification for the substantial resources that Babylonian society invested in musical culture. The role of music in diplomatic and political contexts reveals sophisticated understanding of artistic performance as a tool for international communication and cultural influence that could advance state interest while promoting peaceful relationships between different peoples. Royal correspondence describes musical exchanges between courts that served both entertainment and diplomatic functions, with gifted performers serving as cultural ambassadors who promoted positive relationships between potentially hostile neighbors. The integration of musical activity with economic life demonstrates that artistic culture was not merely decorative luxury, but essential component of social organization that facilitated everything from work coordination to market transactions. Songs that accompanied various forms of labor helped workers maintain rhythm and morale during repetitive tasks, while musical entertainment in commercial venues created social environments that encouraged business, relationships, and economic cooperation. The medical and therapeutic applications of musical performance reveal sophisticated its understanding of organized sounds, capacity to influence physical and mental health, with specific techniques for using music to treat various ailments and psychological conditions. Medical texts describe musical prescriptions for different health problems, indicating that Babylonian physicians recognized music's therapeutic potential and developed systematic approaches to using artistic performance as a complement to pharmaceutical and surgical treatments. The astronomical connections between musical theory and celestial observation demonstrate how Babylonian scholars integrated artistic and scientific knowledge to create comprehensive worldviews that found mathematical relationships linking musical harmony with cosmic order. Theoretical texts describe correspondences between musical intervals and planetary movements that enabled musicians to participate in the cosmic harmonies that governed natural processes, human affairs. The preservation of folk traditions alongside elite musical culture reveals social systems that maintained cultural continuity across different economic, social levels, while enabling artistic innovation and development. Popular songs, preserved in educational contexts, demonstrate that Babylonian culture valued artistic traditions that emerged from ordinary people's experiences, while also supporting sophisticated professional music that required substantial resources and specialized training to achieve. The influence of Babylonian musical innovations on later cultural developments demonstrates the lasting significance of Mesopotamian artistic achievements that continued to influence human musical development long after the original civilization had disappeared from history. Elements of Babylonian musical theory and instrument design can be traced through subsequent cultural traditions that spread throughout the ancient world, contributing to artistic developments that shaped musical culture throughout antiquity and into the medieval period. As the archaeological mysteries fade into scholarly contemplation, you find yourself transported to the pinnacle of Babylonian luxury and refinement, ascending through terraced pathways that wind between cascading fountains and exotic plantings toward the legendary Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Here, in these elevated paradise gardens that Nebuchadnezzar created for his beloved queen, the nightlife of Babylon's elite reaches heights of sophistication and sensual pleasure that remain legendary even today. The air grows cooler as you climb, thick with the perfume of rare flowering plants imported from distant lands, while the sounds of the city below gradually give way to the gentle splash of water and the whispered conversations of the most privileged members of Babylonian society. The Hanging Gardens represent the ultimate expression of human mastery over nature, with engineering achievements that rival any modern botanical installation in their complexity and beauty. Massive stone terraces rise in carefully planned levels, each one supporting soil deep enough to nurture trees that would normally require vast ground-level root systems. The irrigation system that keeps these elevated plantings alive operates through a series of bronze pipes and mechanical pumps that lift water from the Euphrates River hundreds of feet below, creating artificial streams that flow between the garden levels like rivers of liquid silver in the moonlight tonight. As you enter this exclusive realm, where only the highest nobility and most favored royal guests are permitted, the gardens have been transformed into venues for entertainment that surpasses anything the common people of Babylon could imagine. Thousands of oil lamps, their flames protected by delicate glass shades that create rainbow patterns of colored light, illuminate pathways that wind between groves of cedar trees from Lebanon, date palms heavy with ripening fruit, and flower beds that display blooms gathered from throughout the known world. The effect is magical beyond description, as if the stars themselves have descended to create a terrestrial constellation of beauty and wonder. The guests who move through these illuminated pathways represent the apex of Babylonian society, their clothing and jewelry demonstrating wealth that exceeds the annual income of entire villages. Women wear robes woven from silk imported from distant eastern lands, their surfaces embroidered with threads of gold and silver that catch the lamplight with every movement. Precious stones from India and Persia adorn their necks, wrists, and hair, creating displays of color and brilliance that rival the garden's carefully cultivated flowers. Men display their status through elaborately decorated weapons, ceremonial regalia that indicates their positions within the royal administration, and personal ornaments that demonstrate their success in international trade or military conquest. The entertainment provided for these elite gatherings operates according to standards of refinement that transforms simple musical performance into comprehensive artistic experiences that engage all the senses simultaneously. Professional musicians, selected for their exceptional skill and trained in palace workshops for years before being permitted to perform for royal audiences, present compositions of extraordinary complexity that combine multiple instruments in harmonic relationships that create almost supernatural acoustic effects. The garden's natural acoustics, enhanced by strategic placement of reflecting surfaces and sound-absorbing plantings, enable musical performances that seem to emerge from the landscape itself rather than from human performers. The artistic performances presented in the garden's most exclusive areas represent the pinnacle of human creative achievement, with entertainments that combine multiple art forms into unified experiences that transport audiences beyond ordinary consciousness into realms of transcendent beauty and meaning. Musicians, dancers, storytellers, and visual artists collaborate to create multimedia presentations that tell epic stories through coordinated performances that require months of rehearsal and preparation to execute successfully. You notice how the garden's natural elements have been integrated into the entertainment program, with performers using the landscape itself as part of their artistic presentations. Dancers move between trees whose shadows create changing patterns of light and darkness that enhance the visual impact of choreographed movements. Musicians position themselves near fountains and waterfalls whose sounds create natural acoustic accompaniments to their instrumental performances. Storytellers use the garden's various architectural features as stages that provide appropriate settings for different episodes in their narrative presentations. The social protocols that govern behavior in these elite gatherings reveal complex systems of etiquette and precedents that enable hundreds of high-status individuals to interact harmoniously despite potential conflicts over political influence, economic competition, and personal rivalries. Elaborate rules determine everything from seating arrangements to conversation topics, ensuring that social tensions are managed through ceremonial forms that prevent disruption of the evening's entertainment and pleasure. The security arrangements that protect these exclusive gatherings operate with efficiency that remains invisible to guests while ensuring their complete safety and privacy. Guards positioned throughout the garden maintain constant surveillance while remaining sufficiently discreet that their presence does not interfere with the relaxed atmosphere that makes genuine enjoyment possible. Access control systems prevent unauthorized entry while facilitating smooth movement for approved guests and service personnel. The economic resources required to support these elite entertainments represent investments that exceed the annual budgets of entire cities, with expenses that include not only the immediate costs of food, beverages, and entertainment, but also the long-term maintenance of the garden's complex irrigation systems, the salaries of specialized personnel, and the ongoing acquisition of rare materials and artistic objects that make such gatherings possible. These expenditures demonstrate the importance that Babylonian society places on cultural refinement and artistic achievement as expressions of civilized values and political legitimacy. As the night deepens within the Hanging Garden's most exclusive precincts, you find yourself granted access to the innermost circles of Babylonian power and refinement, where the boundaries between entertainment and transcendence dissolve into experiences that challenge the very limits of human artistic achievement. Here, in chambers whose existence is known only to the most trusted members of the royal court, the night reveals pleasures and wonders that surpass not merely the entertainment available to common citizens, but the very conception of what human ingenuity and artistic vision can accomplish when freed from all constraints of cost, convention, or practical limitation. The Queen's private pavilion rises like a jeweled crown at the garden's highest level, its walls constructed from translucent alabaster that glows with soft internal illumination when lit from within by precious oil lamps burning aromatic fuels imported from the edge of the known world. The architectural achievement represented by this structure defies belief, even by the standards of a civilization renowned for engineering marvels, with ceiling vaults that seem to float without visible support, and windows that frame views of the city and countryside below like perfectly composed paintings that change with the movement of clouds and moonlight across the landscape. Within this celestial chamber, the evening's entertainment transcends ordinary categories of artistic performance to become something approaching religious revelation. The musicians assembled for the Queen's pleasure represent not merely the finest performers available within Babylon's borders, but artists who have been sought out and recruited from throughout the known world. Their exceptional talents recognized and rewarded with positions that enabled them to dedicate their entire lives to the pursuit of musical perfection. Their instruments, crafted by master artisans using materials so precious that individual components are worth more than most citizens earn in a lifetime, produce sounds that seem to capture and give voice to the harmonies that govern celestial movements and cosmic order. The musical compositions performed in this rarefied atmosphere have been created specifically for these intimate royal gatherings, with complexities that require not only extraordinary technical skill, but also deep understanding of the philosophical and theological concepts they express through organized sound. These are not entertainment pieces designed to please casual listeners, but sophisticated artistic statements that explore the deepest mysteries of existence. Through musical forms that combine mathematical precision with emotional profundity, each performance represents months of preparation and rehearsal, with individual passages refined through countless repetitions until they achieve the perfection that royal audiences demand and appreciate. The Queen herself, resplendent in garments that represent the collaborative efforts of the empire's finest textile artists, moves through her private domain with the graceful authority of someone who understands her position as both political leader and cultural patron. Her jewelry, incorporating precious stones whose rarity makes them literally priceless, creates patterns of reflected light that shift and dance with her movements, transforming her very presence into a form of artistic performance. Yet beneath the magnificent surface presentation lies intelligence and sensitivity that enable her to participate meaningfully in the sophisticated cultural activities that surround her. The conversations that flow through these intimate gatherings reveal intellectual engagement that operates at levels rarely achieved in human history, with discussions that seamlessly integrate philosophical speculation, scientific observation, artistic analysis, and political strategy into unified perspectives on the nature of reality and human possibility. These are not casual social exchanges, but serious explorations of ideas that will influence policy decisions affecting millions of people throughout the Mesopotamian region and beyond. The Queen and her closest associates possess educational backgrounds that enable them to engage with complex concepts drawn from multiple fields of knowledge, creating dialogues that advance understanding while providing genuine intellectual pleasure. Visual arts displayed throughout the Queen's private chambers represent collecting activities that span decades and involve cultural relationships extending to the furthest reaches of the known world. Sculptures created by master artists from Egypt, Greece, and India demonstrate aesthetic principles that reflect different cultural approaches to representing divine and human beauty. Paintings and tapestries tell stories drawn from various mythological traditions, creating visual narratives that reward careful study while providing immediate aesthetic pleasure. Even functional objects, furniture, serving vessels, decorative accessories, achieve artistic levels that transform utilitarian items into expressions of cultural sophistication and refined taste. The culinary experiences available during these elite gatherings transcend ordinary concepts of dining to become explorations of flavor, texture, and presentation that challenge conventional understanding of what food can accomplish when prepared by master chefs with unlimited resources and artistic vision. Individual dishes require ingredients gathered from throughout the empire and beyond, with preparation techniques that demand skills comparable to those of musicians, sculptors, or other recognized artists. The presentation of food becomes theatrical performance, with service ceremonies that involve choreographed movements, specialized equipment, and timing that creates dramatic effects. Worthy of serious aesthetic consideration, the wines and other beverages served during these intimate occasions represent not merely the finest products available through international trade, but unique creations developed specifically for royal consumption through experimental processes that push the boundaries of fermentation and flavor development. Rare vintages aged in caves whose locations are state secrets. Spirits distilled using techniques known only to royal craftsmen, and ceremonial drinks that incorporate ingredients of profound symbolic significance combined to create beverage experiences that transcend ordinary consumption to become ritual activities with religious and cultural dimensions. The personal relationships that develop within these exclusive circles create informal networks of influence and mutual support that often prove more significant than formal political structures in determining policy, outcomes, and cultural developments. Friendships formed during evening entertainments influence decisions that affect international trade relationships. Military campaigns, religious policies, and artistic patronage throughout the empire. The queen's personal preferences and relationships shape cultural trends that spread throughout Babylonian society and beyond. The artistic innovations that emerge from these elite gatherings often represent collaborative efforts between multiple creative specialists working together to achieve effects that individual artists could never accomplish alone. Musicians compose pieces that incorporate visual elements, while visual artists create works that include musical components, resulting in multimedia experiences that anticipate artistic developments that will not become common till much later periods in human history. These experimental collaborations push the boundaries of traditional artistic categories while creating new forms of aesthetic experience. The intellectual discussions that accompany these sophisticated entertainments often focus on questions that remain relevant to contemporary philosophical and scientific inquiry, with ancient minds grappling with fundamental problems about consciousness, reality, knowledge, and value that continue to challenge human understanding. The queen and her associates possessed educational backgrounds that enabled them to engage seriously with complex ideas while maintaining the practical wisdom necessary for effective political leadership. The preservation of memories from these intimate gatherings occurs through various formal and informal methods that ensure significant cultural experiences are not lost when participants pass away or circumstances change. Court historians document important conversations and artistic innovations, while personal journals and correspondence preserve individual perspectives on events that shape cultural development. The influence of these exclusive entertainments extends far beyond their immediate participants to affect broader patterns of cultural evolution throughout Mesopotamian civilization. As the deepest hours of the night settle over the hanging gardens like a velvet shroud studded with celestial diamonds, the most exclusive gathering in the ancient world reaches its crescendo in a moment of transcendent beauty that seems to suspend time itself. Here, in this paradise crafted from human imagination and divine inspiration, you witness the culmination of everything that Babylonian civilization achieved in its quest to create meaning, beauty, and joy in the face of an often harsh and unforgiving world. The queen and her most intimate companions gather in a circular pavilion whose transparent dome frames the star-filled sky above, creating the impression that they sit within a jewel, suspended between earth and heaven. The final entertainment of the evening transcends all previous performances to become something approaching mystical revelation as musicians, dancers, and poets collaborate in a presentation that tells the story of creation itself through artistic forms that engage every sense and touch the deepest levels of human consciousness. The music begins with a single note from a silver flute, pure and clear as mountain air, gradually joined by other instruments until the sound builds into harmonies that seem to capture the very voice of the cosmos speaking through human artistry. Dancers move with ethereal grace between the pavilion's marble columns, their flowing garments and precisely choreographed gestures creating visual poetry that interprets the musical narrative through movement that appears to defy the laws of physical existence. As you observe this ultimate expression of Babylonian cultural achievement, you become aware of the profound philosophical framework that underlies these magnificent entertainments. This is not mere luxury or self-indulgence, but a systematic exploration of human potential that seeks to discover what becomes possible when intelligence, creativity, and resources combine in pursuit of transcendent beauty. The queen and her companions understand themselves as participants in a cosmic drama where human consciousness serves as the universe's means of appreciating its own magnificence, with artistic creation representing the highest form of religious worship and philosophical inquiry. The conversations that weave through this final gathering reveal perspectives on existence that remain relevant and profound across the millennia that separates ancient Babylon from our contemporary world. These refined minds grapple with questions about the nature of consciousness, the meaning of beauty, the relationship between individual fulfillment and social responsibility, and the possibility of achieving lasting happiness in a world where death and suffering seem inevitable. Their discussions demonstrate intellectual sophistication that challenges modern assumptions about the limitations of ancient thinking, revealing philosophical insights that anticipate many developments usually attributed to much later periods in human intellectual history. The artistic innovations that emerge from this ultimate creative collaboration represent humanity's earliest systematic exploration of the possibilities inherent in multimedia artistic expression, with performers creating integrated experiences that combine music, dance, poetry, visual arts, and theatrical presentation into unified works that engage audiences through multiple sensory channels simultaneously. These experimental presentations demonstrate understanding of artistic principles that will not become widespread until the development of modern technology enables similar levels of creative integration and collaborative coordination. As the performance reaches its climax, the boundaries between audience and performers dissolve, with guests joining in musical responses and choreographed movements that transform the entire gathering into a single collective artistic creation. The queen herself becomes part of the performance, her voice joining the musical chorus while her movements echo the dancers' graceful patterns. This participation demonstrates the democratic spirit that underlies even the most exclusive Babylonian entertainments, revealing cultural values that prioritize shared human experience over rigid hierarchical divisions. The astronomical knowledge that informs this final presentation reveals how Babylonian scholars integrated scientific observation with artistic expression to create comprehensive worldviews that found meaning and pattern in both earthly and celestial phenomena. The performance's timing coordinates with specific stellar positions and planetary movements that add layers of symbolic significance to the artistic content, while the dome's transparent surface enables participants to observe the actual stars and planets that their music and movement celebrate and interpret the philosophical discussion that accompanies this transcendent artistic experience explores themes that connect individual human experience with cosmic purposes and divine intentions, seeking to understand how personal consciousness relates to universal patterns and eternal truths. These conversations reveal sophisticated theological thinking that approaches fundamental questions about existence through rational inquiry while maintaining reverence for mystery and wonder that exceed human comprehension. The sensory richness of this final gathering creates an environment where normal consciousness gives way to altered states that enable participants to experience reality from perspectives that transcend ordinary awareness. The combination of musical harmonies, visual beauty, aromatic perfumes, and refined flavors creates synesthetic experiences where different senses merge into unified perceptions that reveal aspects of existence normally hidden from conscious awareness. These induced altered states demonstrate sophisticated understanding of consciousness manipulation techniques that anticipate many discoveries, usually attributed to modern psychology and neuroscience. The economic and political implications of these ultimate entertainments extend far beyond their immediate participants to influence cultural development throughout the Mesopotamian region and beyond. The artistic innovations pioneered in these exclusive gatherings eventually filtered down through social hierarchies to enrich the cultural experiences available to ordinary citizens, while the political relationships formed during intimate evening conversations shape policy decisions that affect millions of people throughout the empire. The queen's personal preferences and artistic tastes establish cultural trends that spread throughout the known world through trade networks and diplomatic relationships. The preservation techniques employed to document these extraordinary events ensure that their influence extends across generations and centuries, with detailed records enabling future artists and scholars to build upon innovations developed during royal entertainments. Court chroniclers, artists, and philosophers collaborate to create comprehensive documentation that captures both the immediate artistic content and the deeper cultural significance of these transformative experiences as dawn approaches and this magnificent evening draws toward its inevitable conclusion. The participants experience the bittersweet recognition that such moments of transcendent beauty and perfect human connection must always remain temporary, existing as bright islands of meaning and joy within the vast ocean of ordinary existence. Yet, the memory of these experiences provides lasting sustenance that enables individuals to endure the challenges and disappointments that characterize normal human life, while the artistic and philosophical innovations generated during these gatherings contribute to cultural development that advances overall human flourishing. The gradual transition from these ultimate entertainments back to ordinary consciousness occurs through carefully orchestrated ceremonies that enable participants to integrate their extraordinary experiences with normal awareness and daily responsibilities. The Queen and her companions understand that the value of transcendent experiences lies not in escape from ordinary life, but in the enhanced perspective and renewed energy they provide for engaging more effectively with normal challenges and opportunities. The security personnel who have maintained invisible protection throughout these intimate gatherings now begin the complex process of ensuring safe departure for participants whose altered consciousness and emotional vulnerability require careful attention during the transition back to normal awareness and everyday concerns. The logistical coordination required to manage these transitions demonstrates the sophisticated organizational capabilities that enable Babylonian society to support cultural activities of unprecedented complexity and refinement. As you prepare to leave this ultimate expression of ancient human achievement and return to your own comfortable present, you carry with you a profound appreciation for the remarkable heights that human creativity and cultural collaboration achieved even in the earliest stages of urban civilization. The Babylonians created not just the first great cities and legal systems, but also the first systematic explorations of artistic possibility and consciousness expansion that established precedents for cultural development that continued to influence human achievement thousands of years later.